college football, but like the football season is about to get in full swing. And, I'll tell you, USF, they haven't necessarily picked the easy road to start the season. They got Boise State coming up, I think, on Thursday night. Then they've got to play the Gators, and then they've got to play the Hurricanes. In both Miami and Florida State are ranked. I think they're both in the top 15. So best of luck to everybody at USF for that string. I know that a lot of people are excited about getting back into the season, and I can always tell, like my kids, when the Super Bowl ends and they focus, and then once it's back in the air, they start to ask me about going to game and all this other stuff. So we'll be doing what we can do. We're here to talk about major progress on basically what this sign says, helping Floridians get around without being stuck in traffic all the time. And when I became governor, I said, listen, obviously, you want safe roads. There's things. I was like, I want our transportation to be about getting people from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. And to do that, given the way the demographics of our state is, habits of people, it's going to need to be a lot of improvements in the roads and a lot of more expansion in our capacity on the state highways and on the interstates. And so we've done that going forward, and done it, I think, in a really, really big way. And this is not, yes, the traffic is important for quality of life. It's important for families, but it's also important for business to be able to move freight across this state, to go from Tampa to Orlando, for example, and do it in a somewhat timely fashion compared to how it's been in the past is really, really significant. We, as a state, have been ranked the #1 economy in the country 3 years in a row by CNBC. We've also been ranked #1 in economy by U.S. News and World Report. Our GDP, when I became governor, was $1 trillion, which was significant. Now it's close to $1.8 trillion. So we've had really significant economic growth. The only state I think that's had more economic growth since 2019 is Idaho. Now they're a lot smaller, so it's easier to grow higher as a percentage, but we are #1 amongst all large states by a pretty significant margin. And so we're happy with that. I think people saw the federal government. We just got I think it was a AA- rating from one of the rating agencies. Florida, we're AAA with every agency across the board, AAA. And if you look at what we've done, we have state debt from the history of Florida. And, it wasn't like it was like out of control or anything. I mean, honestly, it was relatively modest for a state of our size. But what we did was create an accelerated debt repayment program, and we work with the legislature to be able to do that. So we've been able to retire debt earlier, saving interest costs, but also at below market rates because our guys and the bond finance can go in and do this. So all told, by the end of this fiscal year, all of Florida's history up until the time I became governor will have paid off about 50% of the state's total debt. So of any state, I think there may be 1 or 2 states that don't have any state debt at all, but of the ones that do, we have the lowest per capita debt of any state in the United States. And we continue to do, I think, smart things. Our rainy day fund, it's called the Budget Stabilization Fund. We have more than tripled that since I've become governor. And we actually, in this most recent budget, put money in, the legislature put enough money in to where we can't put any more in legally under the Constitution. Like, we've maxed it out. But it just shows you, we've been good stewards here and been planning this very, 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 very well. So we have all those things that are really, really significant, and that's part of how a state does well, to be firing on all cylinders. A couple years ago, we're running surpluses now, but we were running surpluses. And yes, we were cutting taxes. Yes, we were paying down debt. Yes, we were doing things like raising teacher salaries and doing things to restore our environment, whether it's the Everglades or Springs or the rivers like the Caloosahatchee, all those things, Indian River Lagoon, you name it. So we're doing that. But I looked at the state. We obviously, we're growing. I don't go out and beg people to move to Florida. I mean, some governors will go out and beg that they come to their state. I don't do that. It's people vote with their feet. It's a free country. They have an ability to do that. But it does create some challenges for us. There's some benefits. People bring a business here. They bring high income here. And we've had a lot of people that have fled some of these other states that consume very little services and then contribute. So there's obviously positives, but then there's also just the fact that, we had 21 million people when I became governor. We got 23.5 million now. That means more people are going to be on the roadways. That means you're going to have to build more schools. That means you're going to have to do things to be able to accommodate that. So I knew this. I think the folks in the legislature at the time understood that, and we looked and said, okay, we have we have our secretary here, Jared Perdue. We have a program with our Florida Department of Transportation. It's called the Work Program. They have certain projects that are in it. They get funding. The legislature funds the work program, and those things, they just knock them out, right? But we were looking around the state, and we're like, well, wait a minute. There's things that haven't even made it into the work program where we need relief now. We can't wait 10 years or 15 years, and some even had to wait 20 years to be able to get this done. It doesn't work that way. And so we launched an initiative called Moving Florida Forward, which took billions and billions of dollars from our state surplus and plowed it into infrastructure programs, many of which were not even projects that we're not even going to begin until next decade. Let's get shovels in the ground now. We know we're going to need to do it. And then let's bring them to fruition 5, 10, 15 years ahead of schedule. And so this was a multi-billion-dollar investment. The total amount has been about $7 billion invested in our transportation system, and at least 20 major interstate and roadway projects across the state have been expedited through this initiative. And that includes some of the projects that we're going to talk about today. It also includes the Golden Glades interchange on I-95 in Miami-Dade, which really needed it. The Fruitville interchange on I-75 in Sarasota, for those of you who've ever done that. It's going to be the diverging diamond design. These guys study all this stuff about like what works or what. They study the traffic patterns. And so sometimes, when hurricanes happen, people always ask me if there's evacuations, are you going to do contraflow where you go, everyone can go north? And we always say no, because they've studied it. It doesn't work. What they do is they expand, you use the emergency shoulder, you do that. You still need to get people in preparation for a hurricane. We bring the utility workers into stage. We bring first responders. We do all that stuff. But they've studied it. It doesn't work. They can look at what type of interchanges have proven to work and not work. And they put a lot of time and effort on that. And so this in Fruitville, that interchange could be good. US 98 in Bay County, those of you who've ever been up to Northwest Florida, that needs it. And they're very crowded from like Memorial Day until Labor Day in particular. And like you can go out on that and it's like you just can get stuck. It's a lot of traffic. So that definitely needs it. Realignment of US 301 from County Road 470 to Florida Turnpike up near the Villages in Sumter County, which could be a big bottleneck. I was in Ocala earlier this year when I announced the addition of new auxiliary lanes to I-75 over 31 miles from State Road 44 in Wildwood to State Road 326 in Ocala, and that's 10 or 15 years ahead of schedule. But anybody that's driven up, particularly from the Tampa Bay area, you go up on I-75 and you can hit traffic, especially when you get into that Ocala area, and it can be really, really brutal. So that is going to make a huge, huge difference. This year, we've also been able to celebrate the early completion of congestion relief lanes on one of the busiest parts of I-4, and anyone in the Tampa Bay region who has traveled over that direction knows, from US 27 in Polk County to World Drive in Osceola County. So those auxiliary lanes were completed 8 months ahead of schedule. And I can tell you, when you see people volunteer, hey, thanks for those lanes, it's been really, really making a difference. It's made a difference. But they've studied it too on FDOT. I said, get the videos, let's see what the traffic's like before we open them, and then what happens when you open. and the flow has just been dramatically increased. And that's not even the final product yet. Final product is being working on, and they're going to deliver it. So that's going to be really, really significant. And so we knew that this stuff needed to be done. We could have just waited. Oh, we got our work program. We'll get to it eventually. We'll get to it. But it's like, do we really want people to sit in traffic an extra 10 or 15 years when we know we have the resources, we know we have a job to do, and we just want to go ahead and do it? So we're pleased that this initiative has really gotten steam. We continue to work really hard. Obviously, FDOT is leading the charge on this and doing a really good job. So our total investment in infrastructure for the next 5 years is almost $70 billion in projects to address congestion, also but improve safety and address any future needs of Florida as it continues to grow. Which brings us here to today, and you've got the picture of a bridge that I think most people who either in Hillsborough or Pinellas know very well, the Howard Franklin. We are able to say that the Howard Franklin Bridge is the largest infrastructure project ever delivered in the Tampa Bay area. It's carried nearly 200,000 drivers a day for decades. It's been one of the most vital links that we have. The work that we've done over these many years has been significant. Obviously, we saw it during Hurricane Helene when folks were evacuating in and up to Hurricane Milton. What's happening on this and behind us here, we will end up delivering a modern bridge that will increase capacity by 50%, that will strengthen hurricane routes and improve the safe and efficient movement of people and goods across Tampa Bay. So this is nearly $1 billion investment, and it will, of course, tie directly into other key projects, including Gateway Expressway project and I-275 express lanes, which opened last spring in Pinellas County. It'll also do the existing, which we have on the handout, the I-275 widening in Pinellas County, which is going to be really, really good. We are demolishing, FDOT is demolishing now the old bridge. And so they're going to be continuing to do that. And then they will also be, even though we have the new bridge, they are going to be working on delivering those express lanes for folks. And so when that comes online, that's going to make a huge, huge difference. So this something needed to be done. This stuff is going to be really meaningful. We're also able to announce that we are breaking ground on the I-275 expansion, which is one of the largest moving Florida forward projects in the region. Hundreds of millions of dollars are going into this. This will relieve congestion in Pinellas County. It will help moving goods around the Tampa Bay area, and it will, of course, reduce travel delays. Some say up to 85% reduction in travel delays, regional economic value of over $1.42 billion. So by widening the I-275 lanes and adding new express lanes that connect directly into the Howard Franklin Bridge, we're building a continuous corridor of improved mobility and preserving I-275 as a major hurricane evacuation route. Now, hopefully, we don't need to use that in the ensuing years. I mean, sometimes we have long droughts where we don't get any major hurricanes. I mean, we had 10 years recently where we didn't have any. As it looks right now, I mean, we're late August. As you get into September, it's kind of like the frequency as you get into September, mid-September, late September. You know, that's kind of the most sensitive period if you just look historically about when these storms come. What we can say is at least right now, there's no activity on the horizon that would be concerning. So if it's a wave off Africa, obviously it would take time for something like that to come on the scene, develop. By the time it moves across the ocean, you're talking about many weeks at that point if there's nothing on the horizon now. Sometimes the ones on the Gulf, in the Gulf can form a little quicker and move. Fortunately, we don't see anything now. We're ready. Everybody should be ready. You now have universal disaster preparedness supplies tax-free, regardless of time period. So go ahead and buy whatever you need to buy, and hopefully that they just sit there in the wrapper and you don't use them now. But we're prepared for it. But so far it's been relatively uneventful. Now, I would also caution people, I remember in 22, everyone was saying, because, you know, they always say it's going to be the worst hurricane season ever. Like literally every year I've been, oh, the worst, right? And it was like almost nothing in 2022. And so we get into September and people are starting to notice this. And then we kind of get like, okay, into that second week of September. And then we hit the midpoint of September. Then people are more vocal about it, like this hurricane season's nothing, everyone's fine. And then you had Hurricane Ian, right? I mean, so like it only takes one. So hopefully we don't need to use for hurricane routes, but I do think when these moving Florida projects are done between 275, what we're doing on 75, and you don't need to evacuate that far, but you know, some people do. Some people may have family in southern Georgia, say, hey, I'm just gonna go up and stay with them. Some people may wanna go other places. That is going to make a really big difference. And so these are the successes and the progress that we are able to talk about today, both the Howard Franklin Bridge as well as the I-275 expansion in Pinellas County are really, really significant. And I can tell you that 275, that was not even on the radar to be done had we not done moving Florida forward. So that's going to be delivered way earlier than anyone would have been able to do if we had just done kind of the normal processes that's done. So I want to thank Jared Perdue. I want to thank everybody that's been involved with this. We're gonna keep working. Obviously, we got to do the permanent I-4 over there in Polk and Osceola counties, which is going to be very exciting for a lot of people. You know, there's traffic and then there's kind of traffic. I think rush hour traffic kind of is what it is, and you work to be able to mitigate that. But you've got some spots like in Champions Gate, like in Polk on I-4, where you could be driving like any time, and all of a sudden you could just be in standstill. That has been really alleviated well with what we've done on these temporary lanes, but that has always been a problem spot. So that is, I mean, we're really excited to be able to, what we've done, I know people have appreciated it, but then what we're going to be able to deliver going forward is going to be really, really amazing for people. And then this stuff in the Tampa Bay region, this is important. I mean, this is quality of life. This is economic growth. This is everything you want to be seeing. And I'm happy that we had the foresight. I'm happy the legislature saw the need to do this, to get that money in place, and to get moving with it. So Jared, you want to come up and talk a little bit about these projects?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership. I can truly say because of your focus on transportation infrastructure and your leadership in transportation, we truly have become the envy of a lot of other states and other countries. We have some of the best transportation infrastructure in the world, and we're continuing to expand and improve on that quality every single day. I'm excited to be here today to highlight one, Howard Franklin Bridge, which is the largest project that we've ever done in this region, $1 billion project. Really important connection between Tampa and St. Pete communities. And the team has worked really diligently, worked really hard, and has kept this project on schedule the whole time. It is a very long bridge, a very complicated project, and there are so many milestones throughout the life of this project. What we're highlighting today is that we're actually beginning demolition of the original Howard Franklin Bridge, which was built around 1960. And you can see, you know, if you look at the new structure we've built, it is much, much higher than the original bridge. There's a reason for that. You know, a lot of times people ask, you know, how do you do emergency response in Florida? Well, the answer to that is when you have a governor like Governor DeSantis and a legislature that supports it, you can continue to plan and build infrastructure that can resist these natural disasters. I mean, they come every year. We get them all the time. We should be prepared for it. And so you can see we've built the new bridge much higher, and I still remember vividly last hurricane season between, you know, Debbie, Helene, and Milton making landfall. I remember water lapping up on top of the old bridge, on top of the travel lanes, and it being very dangerous for vehicles. But that water didn't touch the new bridge. It didn't come anywhere close to it because we've significantly raised the elevation. We're going to continue to make strategic investments like that for emergency response. So I'm really proud of the team here. You know, even though we had, you know, some very difficult hurricane seasons, we've had a lot of impacts from that. The team worked really, really hard here on the Howard Franklin Bridge to actually keep it on schedule. And I'm happy to announce today that with the demolition, we're actually doing it on schedule, and this project is still tracking to finish when we originally anticipated. And when you look at that and realize that with all the impacts we've had from hurricanes, it really is remarkable what we've been able to do. And we have a few more milestones to hit. I mean, obviously we've opened the new lanes on the bridge. We still have to open the express lanes, and that's coming in the near future. And then also the multi-use path, which is going to be the first connection for pedestrians from these two communities. So we're really excited about that. We've made a lot of great progress. I think we've already removed around 36 spans from the old bridge. We have about 322 in total. It's going to be a lot of concrete. One thing that's interesting, we're going to take all of that concrete, we're going to crush it, we're going to recycle it and reuse it on other transportation projects. So we're really looking forward to that. Now, you heard the governor talk about moving Florida forward. This is a once-in-a-lifetime legacy investment. You haven't seen an investment like moving Florida forward anywhere else in this country. It injected $7 billion into an already record work program. It was already a record capital plan, the biggest we've ever had. It injected another $7 billion into that and advanced 20 major projects by at least 10 to 15 years. Some of them were not even funded. We have no idea when they would have been built. And I can tell you, I-4 in Central Florida is one of those. I'm sure everybody in this room has driven I-4. That project in total is a $3.4 billion investment. I have no idea when it would have ever been funded if it had not been for the governor's Moving Florida Forward initiative. And you heard him talk about those congestion relief lanes. They have literally cut people's travel time in half. So if you were in rush hour on Friday afternoon, usually it would have taken you anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours to get from Orlando to Tampa. It has cut that in half. Now it's an hour and 15, hour and a half. This is a remarkable improvement. It's been an emotional experience for those that are using it, which brings me to the next point here with the Moving Florida Forward project, I-275. It connects directly to the Howard Franklin Bridge project limits. So it's going to take the capacity improvements that are being provided by the new Howard Franklin Bridge, and it's going to extend those another 7.5 miles into Pinellas County. Don't know when that project would have been funded without the governor's Moving Florida Forward initiative. So we're extremely excited about that, and we are already under contract. So we've already gone through procurement. We're already under contract. We're going to be breaking ground soon. And no pressure to the district secretary here in the room, but I'm confident he's going to finish early and under budget. So we'll see how that goes. So with regards to infrastructure, I mean, you know, this transportation infrastructure that we're delivering has a huge impact on the economy. The infrastructure we have in Florida is one of the catalysts for why we can continue to grow and also maintain the quality of life of all of our residents. And it truly is the envy of the world. So thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Okay. So I want to thank Jared, and yeah, this is big. It's significant. It does impact people's lives. I mean, there's certain things you sign a law to, and like it does matter, and some matter more than others. But when you start talking about things like this, and it affects people in their daily lives in a positive way, you know, that's really what this is all about, and that's what we're doing. I also just want to point out. So there's you know, you hear static out there about, oh, the Florida Department of Transportation is removing, you know, this from the roads, the people painted and all this other stuff. The Florida legislature passed the law that was very clear that I signed into law. We're not doing the commandeering of the roads to put up messaging. And so FDOT has, when it's on a state road, has removed. They put out guidance earlier this summer to make it clear to everybody what the expectations are. Local governments are required to mimic the state standard, and I know some of them think that they don't have to follow that, but this is all very clear in law. And interestingly, it doesn't usually get as much reported. Most of this stuff I mean, they had to remove a back the blue. They had to remove some of these other things. And so it spans different things, but we've made the policy decision in Florida, you know, we're not going to use the roads for that purpose. The roads are there for either pedestrians to cross or cars to go, and that's what it's going to be. And so Jared and his team are just ensuring that the law is upheld. And for those jurisdictions out there, what is it? Is it Delray, Key West, and anyone else? Those three. you know, it's like they think that they should just be a law unto themselves. Well, you know, we have remedies in the law to be able to make sure that people are following what their elected representatives have enacted. And so Jared, his team will do that. I don't know why you'd want to try to make a scene over it, but just understand this has been done across the state, and it's been done, you know, regardless of the messaging that's been used. Okay, do we have any questions?
Yes, Governor DeSantis, Harbinger Singh, the man accused of causing last week's fatal traffic crash in Florida, was in the country illegally. Why didn't Florida law enforcement check his immigration status at the scene of the accident? Why was he allowed to go back to California?
Well, a couple things. I think one is the witnesses were dead. So you had 3 witnesses that were dead, killed in the crash. You have Singh and then his passenger, neither of whom spoke English. So you have a crash scene. It wasn't obvious to the troopers at the time that there was a criminal offense that had been committed. And so they obviously had to clear the road to make sure everyone was in. But they understood this guy. They had his information. They did what was right. They conducted an investigation. They got the video. And then clearly it was a situation where there was probable cause that a crime had been committed. We were able to do the extradition, and it was fine. But you know, if you had someone that had survived, then you know you may have been able to get probable cause at the scene. As it is, the witnesses were dead, and so the troopers had to rely on getting the video, which obviously wasn't apparent. Now, we did do an announcement. The Attorney General did an announcement in Bay County. You know, they were able to nab some folks. We are looking at with these weigh stations to be able. Now, it's tricky because we as a state don't have access to the immigration information, right? So if DHS gave it to us, you know, if it's California license, we don't recognize California licenses granted to illegal aliens. If you could do a spot check, we'll absolutely do that. I think what they're at least able to do, though, is ensure that the drivers coming through are able to read and understand English, because this guy couldn't speak English. And you guys have all seen these roads where you'll go, these are busy highways, and there'll be little gaps in them, you know, for official use only or this or that. It is not meant for motorists to just do a U-turn. It is certainly not meant for a semi-truck to do abrupt. I think he knew what was going on. It was reckless disregard for the safety of other people. And he tries to do this abrupt U-turn, and that other car didn't have a chance. That other car didn't have a chance. So, and I know the Attorney General is asking the Trump administration to consider pausing CDL programs in California and Washington State, because first of all, you're not allowed to issue a CDL to somebody who is not in this country legally. You're not allowed to issue a CDL to somebody who is not capable of understanding traffic signs and have an ability to communicate, and yet they seem to do that without much pushback. That creates dangers for other people. You know, obviously, I blame, you know, California's a sanctuary state. Their problems spill over to the rest of the country, as we're seeing. This guy came illegally, and he went to California, and he went to sanctuary jurisdictions. So that's just what happens. So yes, that's a huge problem. The company is at fault here too, because if you're running a company like this, you should know whether your drivers are capable of handling a vehicle of that magnitude. That is, if somebody's not able to do it, you're putting a lot of people's lives in jeopardy. The federal government took away the license, the business license from that company. I mean, obviously, there's probably going to be additional stuff that happens there, but certainly, I think we're looking at: are there any ability for us to hold the company accountable at the state level in addition to the federal level? Because I think that you need to do it. But this driver, he made the decision to get behind the wheel of that thing, knowing that he was not able to fully understand his surroundings and fully understand what was on the road. And that created a massive hazard. and it resulted in the death of 3 people. I was asked the other day, like, oh, there's a bunch of people like in foreign countries that are signing a thing to say basically, go lenient on him, like he didn't intend, to kill these folks. Well, I was like, well, he intended to get behind the wheel knowing that he didn't have the full capacity to be able to handle that vehicle. He was driving it around knowing that he was not well situated to do that. He attempted a very reckless U-turn with a massive truck, knowing how very dangerous that is. So the notion that somehow this guy wasn't really at fault, that he was kind of, they almost portraying him as like a victim of what happened here. I don't buy that. This guy knew what he was doing. And did he intend to do a clean U-turn and not run into anybody or have anyone run into him? Yeah, that was probably the intent, but the reality is it was a reckless disregard for the safety of others to do what he did. And it's an avoidable tragedy is what it is.
Hey, Governor, we've had a number of parents reach out to us, obviously, about the mural situation.
About the what? I'm sorry?
Mural
Okay.
situation. They're upset because, their kids just finished helping paint murals for this crosswalks project near their schools. And the parents sent me that FDOT gave them Planning Innovation of the Year, and now something that they raised money for and the kids helped paint are now getting stripped away that they just finished months ago. What do you say to these?
Do you want to talk about that specific issue? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So basically, anything that was previously permitted or installed or awarded, anything you can bring up from the past essentially is irrelevant now because we have a new law and we have a new standard, and we're simply implementing that standard, and it's across the board. Pavement art is not allowed, and we're removing everything that's not compliant with state, federal standards, and that's the approach that we're taking. We did an inventory of more than 400 locations across the state, and it's all kinds of art. And so, this is one of those locations that's part of that. And, as we continue to implement this, we're going to be working with our local government partners.
Yeah, but I do think it's important to point out that, there was a law that was enacted. So I get like what may have happened, years ago. No one was doing anything wrong per se. But I think there was a feeling amongst the elected officials, certainly in other parts of the country, it had gotten way out of control to where really the safety and the use of the roads was almost secondary to people being able to appropriate that for different types of messaging. But the legislature passed it. I think it passed unanimously. I think in the Senate it did. I don't know about the House. I signed it into law, and then Jared and his agency issued the guidance. And so what I would tell kids is, we have a representative system of government. People elect their representatives. They're able to enact legislation with the governor's signature, and then when that happens, then obviously people will conform the conduct accordingly. And so I don't think those kids were doing anything wrong. I think it's just a change in policy, and we don't want to be in a situation where we're playing whack-a-mole. Say, oh well, no, that mural's fine, but that's not. We think the pedestrians may get confused there. We think a driver, oh no, that's fine. This. Because, then you get into like, oh, there's a content thing and all that. No, we're just not doing it. That we're out of that business in Florida. And so all they're doing is just enforcing the law that had been passed. And I understand there may be people that disagree with it. There's laws that are on the books that I enforce that I may not fully agree with, but I took an oath to do it. And so that's the way the cookie crumbles. And so, but there was a change in law. There was a change in guidance that has been issued. And now with the Trump administration, they are very aggressive on saying that the roads should not have the markings on them, and that's not the appropriate thing to do. So I think you kind of have agreement now, state, federal. I think we're all swimming in the same direction. Most local governments, I think, are fine. They're like, look, if the law changes, the law changes. You're always going to have the Key Wests of the world that are going to virtue signal. That's just what they do. I get it. I know, not my first rodeo. But the reality is, they don't have a legal leg to stand on here. Jared put out the information. They had an opportunity to correct. I think, has that elapsed yet, or do they still have more time?
We still have more time. It's 14 days from notification.
Okay, so sometime next week, I think it'll be. Was that when it is? I think so, yeah. So stay tuned on that.
Mayor DeSantis, you said for months that you want local property tax cuts. To what extent is your and the chief financial officer's DOGE or FAFO initiative an effort to convince Floridians that local governments are responsible for their high property taxes?
Well, I think the reality is everything you pay in property tax goes local. We don't, if you look at our state budget, we don't get property tax. The state of Florida has a sales tax. State of Florida has things like dock stamp taxes and some other auxiliary taxes, which were, by the way, I think we're the second lowest tax state in the country at the state level. And of course, we have no income tax. So when they see their property tax bills going up and they say, you know, hey, Governor, you know, cut our property taxes, you know, my response is, if you look at the way Florida's constitution is designed, that power is lodged with local governments. So if the legislature wanted to just pass a law to reduce the millage, let's say, state, they can't do that constitutionally. So that's why what we're working on is a proposal to go on the ballot in 2026, where Floridians will be able to vote something that will do the property tax, but you have to do it through the Constitution. But yes, if you look at what's happened, there's been a major boom in Florida real estate. And honestly, home prices have gone up everywhere. They've gone up probably more here because we've had more demand, more population. And so what happens is, you know, someone that bought a house for $300,000 10 years ago is now being told their house is worth $750,000. Well, you know, that's an unrealized gain. You haven't sold your house for that much, but somehow your property tax bill is going up. When Floridians have to sell a home, like maybe, you know, you have a smaller home, now you have kids, you need a bigger, you then go into a higher tax basis. So even if you do the homestead, you're in a situation, if you bought a house over the last couple years, you're paying more for property taxes than you would have just a few years, and by a significant amount. If you look at the budgets of these local governments, and the CFO, Blaise Ngoli, has done a really good job of going on site. They're doing a lot of stuff, and honestly, not everyone's been cooperative, and we'll have more to say on that shortly, and showing, okay, wait a minute, Broward County, you know, even though Florida's had a lot of population growth, Broward, since 2020, has not had any net population growth, and yet their budget's gone up like 60%. And so you ask yourself, well, what is that? And why is it going up? Because people buy homes, it's a gusher of revenue that's going into the coffers. And so rather than returning that money to the taxpayers, they've basically been spending it. So what I think taxpayers want is, okay, local government, we want education, 100%. We want law enforcement and fire and other first responders, you know, some of the water infrastructure, 100%. But we don't need some of the stuff that's been spent money on. And that's the purpose of these audits and these overviews, to be able to show taxpayers, you know, that yes, it can be done. My position, and we're working on the concrete proposal, is twofold. One, if you're a Florida resident and you have a primary residence here, your homesteaded property, I think you should be able to own that free and clear of the government. I don't think that the government should be able to just tax you infinitum. And yes, it hurts senior citizens who are on fixed income, but it also hurts young families to try to get ahead by constantly getting hit up. And we're in a unique situation where that's a minority of the property tax revenue that goes to local governments. Probably about a third is homestead. The rest is either non-homestead or commercial. And so if you just return budgets to where they were 4 or 5 years ago, I think that would probably be enough as it is. But, you know, we have tourists coming. We have a lot of opportunities. Some of these rural counties may not have that. And I said I'm willing to help backfill their revenue from the state coffers, because it's not that much revenue. But like the Tampa Bay area, Miami, all these places, like you have people that are paying taxes who aren't residents here. Literally, you can shift the tax burden to people that can't. I mean, local government can shift more to people that can't even vote them out of office. Like how? That's what you want. You don't want the people that vote to not have to pay, and then the people that are just visiting or snowbirds to be able to do it. So I think it's definitely doable. I also think, though, you know, if you are going to have for investment properties or snowbirds or commercial properties or whatever taxing is being done there. Now, I think that revenue should only be able to use for things like education, police, fire, and some of the water things. I don't think that they should be able, even a snowbird, to tax that and use it on some of these extraneous stuff. So let's say we want to do everything everyone agrees on, we'll do that. But rather than grow budget in other areas, I would rather that be for the property tax, for you guys not to do the property tax on the homesteaded properties. And I'll tell you, We're the only state that can probably pull this off, given the structure of our economy, I mean, you remember, and part of this is political, President Trump comes in and kind of the media is like, oh, no one wants to come to America. Like literally, I was being given reports saying no one's coming anymore and foreign tourism is tanked. And maybe that was true in other parts. Maybe there has been a drop. I can tell you in Florida, we just had in the most recent quarter, we had the best quarter ever that we've had for the second quarter of any year. We had massive numbers of Canadians coming in. Remember they said the Canadians aren't coming in? No, they're coming in. As a kid that grew up in Dunedin, I just remember in February and March, I'd see more Ontario license plates than I would see Florida plates because they're all there to watch the Blue Jays in spring training. So we have this. We have people that are doing, and then you also have another issue that is kind of under the surface that I think a lot of voters are concerned about, because we've never had a situation where home prices are more out of whack from median household income. So if you look at the median household income in the United States is probably something, between $75,000 and $85,000. The median home price is well over $400,000. So to be able to afford the median home in the United States right now, you would need to be making like $130,000. So that's not sustainable. Something's going to give on that. And I think people see, hey, it's expensive, it's hard, especially for young people who are just starting out. I mean, I remember when Casey and I got married, we got married when the market had tanked, the real estate market. So we got married in 2009, we bought a home, and honestly, that was the bottom of the market. And so we were able, I was a lieutenant in the Navy. It wasn't like I was living high on the hog. She was she's successful doing what she was doing with TV. But we were able to do that. If we were starting out today, me being in the Navy and her doing what she was doing, I don't think we would have been able to afford even a modest, this was like an 1,800 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 3-bath, like whatever. It was a nice, but I mean, it was not like extravagant. There's no way we'd be able to afford that. And so I think people look and they say, okay, what is driving this? Well, part of it is just the COVID fiscal policies and the Fed printing money has inflated things, which makes it difficult for a lot of people. But then a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. Is BlackRock going in and buying these neighborhoods? And so they can afford to buy the homes and then they just rent it out to people. And so are we going to become like a nation of renters? And I saw a very troubling statistic the other day. There are more would-be home buyers that are over the age of 70 in the United States than under the age of 30. So that's telling me like these young kids, they're not even in the game. And I think it's because it's not affordable. So you have this situation, and some people say, well, companies should not be able to buy homes. That's difficult to do legislatively because, you may have a small business that has 2 or 3 homes and they may do stuff like that. It's not all BlackRock, but I'll tell you, if you say your personal homesteaded residence can't be subject to property tax, but the investors could still be subject to property tax, what does that do? That basically puts a thumb on the scale in favor of traditional home ownership. That is going to make it better for people and ultimately, I think, more desirable to be a homeowner rather than necessarily to be an investor. So I think there's a whole host of issues that are wrapped around in this. But the one thing we control, we don't control the price of your home. We don't control the insurance market. These are things that have market forces. Now, there's things that we can do to make things more attractive here or there on the margins, but ultimately, those are private decision making. Taxes is purely government. The market can do what they want. We the people of the state control through our Constitution how your property can or cannot be taxed. And so we have an opportunity to present that on the ballot in November of 2026. I've talked to a lot of these legislators. I mean, they're really excited about being able to do it. I know we didn't have necessary support, in the leadership, certainly from the House, on what we were trying to do. Because I just said, listen, we'll do the ballot in 26, but in 25, we should do a $1,000 rebate for homestead Floridians. And we could have done it, and they didn't want to do it. Now, I think the constituents are asking, hey, we want property tax relief. So I think the rank and file in both the House and Senate are really excited about being able to lean in on this. But that's the one thing we can control. So we can't manipulate the housing prices. That is obviously, that goes up and down. And when you have, so not only do you have a gap between median income and home prices, I think you probably have to go back right before 2008. You have way more sellers than buyers right now. So if you go back 3 years ago, certainly in Florida in the COVID rush, there were way more buyers than sellers. I mean, literally, I'd be talking to people, someone would just knock on their door and say, hey, I want to buy your house. Here's cash, do it. Because people were fleeing California. Because, you know, California, like a middle-class home, just costs a lot more than it does in Florida. So they could cash out of their home there, have a bigger house here, and still pocket money. So they're just cutting people checks, saying, we'll take it. So that was that. Now, there's a lot more stuff that's on the market. And I think what's holding up sales is the interest rates. That people, if they're in an existing home with a lower rate, they don't want to get out of that and then have to do a home that they're going to be paying a lot more in a monthly payment because of the increased interest costs. When those interest rates go down, I think you're going to start to see more sales occur. But I think a lot of people, and I'm kind of lean this way, I don't think sellers are going to be happy with what they're offered. I think more people will be in the market, but I think they're going to offer a lot less than what they were willing to offer, 2 years ago. And I think you're going to probably see some correction in the overall prices of homes when interest rates go down. Now, new construction, you have the costs, the inflation that we've seen over many years, that contributes to it too, obviously. I mean, whatever it costs to build a house today versus 5 years ago, it didn't just like 5 or 6% more. I mean, it's a lot more. All this stuff, replacing damage to your home is a lot more expensive than it was. So these are a bunch of different factors. I do think that what we have now is not sustainable for housing market. I think push is going to come to shove eventually. But what can we do to make it easier for Floridians? The thing we can control, we the people, obviously the elected officials voting to put this on the ballot, and then we the people being able to cast a vote in November 26th, that's the one thing, the taxes we can control. And I'm here to tell you, and I think the DOGE efforts and the audits that Blaise and Golia are leading are part of this. And it's interesting, we've got some people in Hillsborough who've welcomed this. We have others who haven't. We've got some in other parts of the state that have welcomed this, and then we have others who have fought it. So, you can kind of see, but I don't think anybody can justify the increases that we've seen in many of these local government budgets over the last 4 or 5 years. And so the question is that, as a taxpayer, what you want to see? Certainly when it's anything extraneous to education and kind of the law enforcement and the core functions, or would you rather focus on the core functions, have that reasonable budget, and then be able to actually own your home free and clear of the government? Because I do think these property taxes have pinched a lot of people, and I think we got to do something about it. So all I will say to that is stay tuned. We're going to be, I'm already working with folks. We're crunching numbers. We're doing all to get this done in November of 2026. And I will be on the front lines trying to deliver that for you. Thank you.